My dad's an animal.
What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to Tuesday Night Spotlight. Got a very special guest in the building. He is from Newport News, right around the way. He's a 6-time ASCAP award winner, and he is an audio engineer, a music producer, and a composer for Criminal Minds, Army Wives, and Everlasting. Just to name a few. Just to name a few. We got Scott Gordon in the building. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here.
Nice to have you. I'm excited.
I'm going to correct you, though. I got to correct you right off the bat.
Okay.
I must have won 20 ASCAP.
I'm so sorry. They need to update that on
Sorry.
online.
One for each of the Criminal Minds seasons, which there was 15.
Okay.
One for each of the Army Wives seasons. There were 7. And then 2 for Criminal Minds Beyond Borders, and 1 for Criminal Minds Suspect Behavior. So
20 times.
don't want to brag.
Oh, no. That's what you earn. You deserve to,
Yeah.
That's what it is. So I appreciate you for correcting me. But yeah, so you've got a perspective that's a lot different from a lot of people I talk to on a day-to-day basis. What's something in the TV or film industry that you've learned that maybe the average person doesn't know?
There's a good question. I think one of the things I learned was regarding TV was how quickly it all comes together. How little time as the composers we had to put our music together, how little time the editors had to put their thing together. I think the whole process of making the show from the beginning of when they shoot to when it's mixed, the final mix, it's a matter of a couple 3 weeks.
Oh, shit.
Their shooting schedule is like 8 days, I think, for an episode, and then I think maybe 2 weeks to edit, and then the sound design guys and the composers get a week to 10 days. So yeah, 3 weeks or so, and it happens quickly.
Is it like a higher pressure thing, or is it just like a thing where, you just kind of got to manage it as best you can to make it easier so you don't at the end have to worry about it?
For me, at first I had 3 partners, so 3 other guys writing music, and then one guy dropped out, and it was just 3 of us. So 3 guys doing one show. I felt the pressure because when I started, I didn't know what I was doing. And so it took me a long time to do even my third of it. But after about 3 or 4 years, I kind of figured it out.
Gotcha.
For the most part. Not to say that, I had it down. I didn't have it down. I don't think you ever get it down. But uh, I figured out how to make the producer happy. And when I say producer, I literally mean one woman who was judging the music. We were essentially, once the show was up and running and all the producers weren't involved, it was essentially one woman who would judge our music and give us notes and say, fix this, do that.
Gotcha. And that's just the person that was over top of the sound production and stuff.
Yeah, she was the post-production supervisor was her title, and then eventually she became a producer as well.
Okay. What was gonna ask you? And you're from Newport News. Tell me about what was like growing up for you. Everybody has their journey.
In Newport News, I grew up in Hilton, kind of near the James River. I love Newport News still. Growing up there was nice. It was beautiful. I had cousins that lived nearby. We could walk to the river and crab and uh, just it was a nice place to grow up. I started getting in trouble kind of early on, and so I ended up going to boarding school. So when I was about 15, I got shipped off to Georgia to a boarding school. Ended up graduating high school from there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was just a child of the 70s. I was doing what everybody else was doing. I was just getting caught.
And then you got sent out there. Now your background is as a drum. You got your start as a drummer.
Yeah, I started as a drummer.
Would you say that started around the time you got out in Georgia, or was that did you come back afterward?
No, I started drumming when I was about 11.
11.
I got my first snare drum when I was 11. I got my first drum kit when I was 13 and did my first gig when I was like 14 in
Shit.
Newport News at this country dive on Warwick Boulevard.
Oh wow.
Um,
Like
and
about
uh, and I thought I would end up a drummer. That's all I really wanted to do for many years.
right.
Um, and then when I did come home when I graduated high school, I came back, and the first band I joined was called the Flying Machine. Um, and it was a big band. We had a couple horn players, a girl singer, guitar, bass, drums. There was a lot of us,
It had to been some.
and we did top 40 and all covers, no original music. Um, a lot of funk and soul. I was the one white boy in the band. Um, we ended up uh, we got a guy that joined the band as a sax player and percussionist, and he had a connection with a guy named Clarence Carter.
Okay.
I don't know if you know who he
That
is.
name sounds very
He's a
familiar.
blind R&B guitar player singer. His hit was Patches
Okay.
was the name of his hit, and he had another one called Slip Away. And so this guy who had the connection with Clarence um, also owned a step van and a PA system.
Okay.
So we all went down to Georgia, to Atlanta, to meet Clarence Carter to be his opening act and his
Mhm.
backup band.
Wow.
Now the sax player who was the connection, who owned the van and the PA,
Mhm.
was charging the rest of the band for the van and the PA.
Ooh,
So we weren't making a whole lot of money. But we
but
were playing with Clarence Carter, and for me, it was super cool. And um, we played in uh, these big venues. When I say big, I don't mean big like a coliseum or something like that, but big like roadhouses.
right.
The Chitlin Circuit is what they call it.
That's what they call it.
Yeah, yeah, that's what it's known as. So it's Mississippi, it's
Uh,
Alabama, it's Georgia, it's all
Good.
down there in the South,
Yeah.
which is where he was from. And we were hauling our gear up
The chip.
stairs, and uh, there was like seven of us, eight of us maybe, and sharing two hotel rooms, watching TV and listening to music at the same time. Somehow, most of the time, uh, it was an experience, definitely.
Was it like almost like a rock star lifestyle?
No,
Nah,
not even,
not it. It
not
didn't live up
even.
to the image.
No, 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 no. This was pretty, I mean, it was bare bones. We weren't making a lot of money, and it wasn't, there was no luxury, that's for
Almost
sure.
like starving artist type thing.
It was
But you
starving
guys were
artist.
getting good
Yeah, it was
exposure
paying
and
dues. Exactly.
good way to put it.
Yeah.
Good way to put it. I remember you said at some point you were like, this is cool, but you don't think like long if you want to sustain yourself, you didn't feel like as a drummer or like working in a band doing gigs, you could do that.
That realization came a bit later. I was in that band for a while, and then I got a hernia. I couldn't continue in that band. Somebody replaced me as the drummer in that band. I may have this reversed. No, I don't. Then I joined a different band,
Okay.
another uh, top 40 band, um, and we played around town in Newport News and Hampton and Norfolk and a lot of the military bases and stuff. Um, uh, Stopped playing in that, left Virginia in, I don't know what year, probably 1978,
Let me see my notes.
79.
It's '79. Is that when you went to University of Miami?
Yes,
Okay.
I went to University of I went to Florida for a while and hadn't decided to go to school. And I got a job as a carpenter's assistant. Uh, and pretty quickly realized, oh, I better go to college. And I got accepted to the music school at University of Miami, which is a really good music school, jazz school. I wasn't a schooled musician at that point. I didn't read music very well, and but I had a good feel, and I think that's what got me in. So, um, but I just really wanted to play drums still,
Right.
and I wasn't into school, and so I dropped out after a year. And I had met my wife in that first year, and that was 1979. We're still together. Woohoo.
That's
And
what's up.
I figured one of us had to graduate, and it wasn't going to be me. So, so she went and got her degree in communications and a minor in acting or drama. And in 1984, we left Miami and got married in Williamsburg and moved to New York City and rented an apartment that my brother was subletting to us. He had just moved to California from New York,
Mhm.
and we started subletting his apartment. And I went to the Institute of Audio Research, which is one of those recording schools.
Right.
Everything analog. This is pre-digital anything. Um, so now I'm just kind of into my story. Should I just ramble on?
Oh no, you
I
yeah.
mean, I'm happy to if you want, or if you'd rather, you know.
No, you're going actually you're going right down my timeline. You
Okay.
going, yeah, so you're good,
All
please.
right. All right.
Yeah.
So, got a job at a jingle studio in New York, New York, New Jersey. It was a New Jersey studio, but they had some pretty big clients coming from the city, and uh, did some Kodak ads and uh, Toys R Us ads. Those were the big ones. And then we also did some jazz records. We also did some Hasidic records, some Jewish children's records.
What's Hasidic, if you don't mind me asking?
Hasidic is you've seen these guys in New York with the black hats
Yeah.
and the curls like this.
Yeah.
Those are Hasidic Jews.
Okay, okay, okay.
Okay. And so it's religious music. They're singing in
Hebrew.
Hebrew, but these guys would come in, and I was just getting started. I was just the lowly second engineer, making coffee, getting lunch, and patching things in and operating the tape machine.
Mhm.
So I wasn't super focused on the guys. I was more focused on the guy I was assisting for. But the guys, I kept noticing they seem to be having a really, really good time, these Hasidic Jews. And they're just giggling nonstop as they're out there on the microphones. So at times it's like, guys, you got to stop laughing because
It's work.
we're supposed to be recording here.
Right.
Turns out they were just getting high every night.
That was their
They
escape.
were outside and they were just smoking joints, and they'd come back in, and just like you might see any other band do, you know. So um
That's funny.
but that was a good experience. That got me started um in a real studio doing what turns out I think I was meant to be doing, which was engineering. Um uh after what, 5 years or 4 years playing in this very cheesy Miami Beach lounge band,
Mm.
I realized I couldn't see myself doing that, when I was 40
Right.
or 30 even. So uh, I realized I had to find another path. When I was in music school, I saw a lot of guys that practiced a lot more than I did.
Okay.
that were way more passionate about playing drums than I was.
So that made you feel like that wasn't
Like maybe it's not maybe that's not what I'm meant to be.
right.
Yeah. Um,
And then what would you say made you feel like engineering was more so for you?
well, the initial impetus to do it was I wanted to write songs. And I thought, well, I can play drums and
Mhm.
I can play harmonica and I can play guitar and bass and a little bit of keyboards. And I'm not really good at any of them at this point, I
Oh
have to say.
man.
But I figure, well, I can do all those things. I love songwriters and I have such admiration for what they do because just music in general affects us emotionally and it hits me hard and I thought, wow, I want to create something.
Right.
Um and I thought, well, let me figure out how to record myself and then I'll do that. Um
Genius, by the way. Endless references.
what's that?
I said that's genius, by the way. You got endless references because you can just record yourself and make sure it's fine tuned enough to where you can send them out to where if you know.
Yeah, well, that was the plan.
Right.
The plan didn't really come to fruition because uh I never became a songwriter. I've co-written some songs, but a few. Um I really got into engineering and I really enjoy helping facilitate other songwriters and helping them to realize uh, their wildest dreams when it comes to recording their songs, producing their songs. Um, I see myself as somebody who who's kind of put here to serve like that, to to help people with their music. And
Express.
as it turns out, I didn't miss not learning to be a songwriter. I think you need to learn when I say that, I mean you need to spend a lot of time writing songs to get good at it.
Right.
I spent a lot of time in the studio engineering and got good at that. And turns out I really like that. Um, I don't need to be the artist. I don't need to be the guy in front. In fact, I prefer to be the guy on the other side of the glass and just helping to make stuff sound great and hopefully bringing the best performances out of people uh, that maybe they didn't even realize they had in them.
That's beautiful. It's like basically you want to help um cultivate and enhance people's creativity.
Yes,
And that's a beautiful thing.
whatever I can do, just constantly trying to make it sound better, whether that be uh, a couple words of encouragement to a singer as they're singing, or a suggestion of what to try, or whatever it might be. However, I can make the atmosphere in the room such that people are comfortable and just want to be creative and feel uh, like they can be as vulnerable as they want to be, and that they're in a safe space.
It's like an artist's dream. That make yeah.
Well, that's what that's what I strive to do, and have had some success at it.
I'd say very much so.
Yeah.
How would you if I'm going too far ahead on the timeline, please, jump in. But like how did you end up getting the opportunity to um into TV? Like doing sound for TV?
That had everything to do with my brother. I have an older brother. His name's Mark,
Okay. Shout out to
and
Mark.
Mark is a film and TV producer, and he got to LA a couple years before I did. He's a couple years older than I am, and uh, he started out in New York. Uh, his first project was producing an off-Broadway play
Mhm.
that closed after the first night.
Oh,
But he did it. He got it made. He raised the money. Uh, he didn't put any of his own money in, but he raised the money for the play. They produced it. It just got panned in the reviews, and when that happens, they just close it.
Right.
So they closed it right away. But he went on to LA, and then, you know, without getting too deeply into his story, to answer your question, my brother's a film and TV producer. Uh, he did the movie Speed. He
Mm.
produced Saving Private Ryan, Day After Tomorrow,
Oh shit.
10,000 BC. Um,
A lot of hit
you know,
right there.
probably, dozens of movies, and I
Right.
can't think of them all right at the moment.
That's
But
ridiculous.
he did a great one, more of an indie movie called Talk to Me with Don Cheadle.
Okay.
If you ever get a chance to see it, I think it's
Talk
about
to
a
me.
real guy. Yeah, Talk to Me. Um, and it's about a guy who he becomes a DJ, and it's kind of his story. So real
Okay.
interesting.
We have to check
Uh,
that out. Make
that's
sure
one
y'all
of
check that out.
that's one of his indie movies that was good. But then he's got, the big blockbusters as well. Anyway, I had some friends, two friends, Mark and Stefan Fantini, they were brothers,
Mhm.
and I had worked with them doing demos. They had a band, and I was working with another producer who was producing demos for the Fantini brothers. And the Fantini brothers were very talented. They had been signed, but then dropped because of change of management at the label or something like that. So they were kind of starting again with this producer. Um, and I was the engineer, and we developed a pretty tight bond. Um, and at one point, one of the brothers, just because the music wasn't going anywhere, the rock band thing wasn't going to happen for them at this point. The producer had kind of promised to get their music into the right hands, and he wasn't able to deliver. So anyway, um, they started kind of heading in a different direction. And I was still doing records, but they wanted to get into doing film and television.
Right.
And they made friends with this guy named Mark Mancina, who was a well-established composer. He did the music for Speed,
Right.
so he knew my brother.
Mhm.
So between Mark Mancina, who had already worked with my brother,
Mhm.
and myself, who my brother had to take a meeting with me,
Of course.
and then the two Fantini brothers, who were kind of put it
Cool.
all together, we went in and just, uh, you know, to my brother's office and said, "Hey, here we are. You got this guy who you already know, and you got three other guys that are ready to work their asses off for you. If you have anything for us, please give us a shot. Let us demo, or let us submit music for whatever you might be working on."
Right.
And what he happened to be working on right then was Criminal Minds. And honestly, the four of us didn't really think that it would go. I mean, we saw the pilot and it was good.
Mhm.
Um, and the actors were good and everything. It wasn't that it wasn't a good show. It's just, it seemed like there were so many of those kind of,
Yeah. There were.
the NCISs and all the different CSIs. And so we're like, well,
Here we go again.
let's see what happens. And, who knew that it would be such a massive hit?
What was
And it was.
what was the holy shit moment? Like it was like, oh wow, this is really like picking
Well, it
up.
was pretty early on. I don't know whether it was the first season or the second season. I want to say maybe the second. But they put us on. They aired Criminal Minds after the Super Bowl, and
That's
that
crazy.
reserved
That
for the shows they really want to get out there.
yeah.
So that moment felt like, oh, maybe we got something.
My goodness, that's so huge.
And then it just kept going and going and going. And I really thought at the beginning, I thought, I think I could do this for about 5 years. I don't think I could continue it much beyond that.
Mhm.
It, it, um, it took everything I had to learn how to become a composer because I had never done it. I was an engineer. I was good at doing that, at getting good sounds and helping people make their records.
Right.
Um, but I had never composed for TV or for picture at all.
And what would you say? You would say there from what would you say is di- the differences between the two, like the drastic differences between the two?
Well, for me, as somebody who wasn't a writer at all of a sudden I'm the writer,
Mm.
as opposed to just the guy that was trying to make somebody else's song or piece of music sound good. Now I have to not only make it sound good, but I have to write it.
So you ended up getting, doing what you set out to do. It just
Yeah,
happened to be in a different
yeah,
way.
and my path took a lot of different directions even before that. I mean, I worked as a tour manager. I worked as
Yeesh.
um, um, as a sorry,
Okay.
as a front of house sound guy, as a monitor guy, whatever I could do. Um, uh, so learning to write was the biggest challenge. And the way that I did it was this. In the first season, since I really didn't know what I was doing, and not only did I not know the process or how any of it, the mechanism of it worked, I didn't know the software that was needed. It's all done in the box. It's all samples and you're playing a keyboard and it's all done that way. There are, in this show anyway, there were no real instruments really.
Okay.
And uh, previous to this, I called myself a idiot, right? I didn't know bupkis about MIDI or programming or any of it. I was recording rock bands,
Right.
keys
Lines,
and
everything.
guitars and horns and strings, everything real live.
Right.
And by then I had gotten into Pro Tools. Analog was kind of fading. It certainly long faded by that then, but um, uh, so in the first season, after about 6 episodes, and there were enough cues written, and we didn't hand in like a stereo mix. We would hand in stems,
Mhm.
so there'd be 8 stereo pairs that would make up the final mix. So if you have all the faders of those 8 pairs just sitting at zero,
Mhm.
that's the mix that's intended.
Gotcha.
But we
Gotcha.
separated it into stems so that when they're on the mix stage, if the producer in the moment thinks, maybe there's too much strings here, they could turn them down a little bit, or maybe I don't like this drum part here, they could mute it or do whatever they wanted. And so that allowed me to take those stems
Mhm.
and kind of go crazy with them and just edit everything, turn things around backwards, do whatever I could do to kind of fool the producers into not recognizing that it was music that had already been in another
So,
episode.
right. Okay.
And in addition to the editing that I was doing, I had a secret weapon, and my secret weapon was my dear friend Dave. And Dave's a great guitar player who's um one of these guys. It's not just about the technique of playing guitar. He's really totally into the sounds of it. So he's got, big pedal boards with all kinds of distortion and delay and
Right.
modulation effects and everything you can imagine, and knows how to use it all. And I figured, let me have a little bit of an edge to my
Yeah.
stuff that the other guys don't have. How can I make it special? So I hired Dave to come. I'd put the piece together, and then I'd have Dave come in and kind of play over it so I could get melodies that maybe I wouldn't have thought of. Dave's just a great musician, and I could guide him to what I needed. Um, and the fact that he was such a sound guy,
Mhm.
he was able to give me a lot of atmospheric stuff that you would never recognize as guitar.
And that it makes me want to go back and even just listen for it when I watch an episode now, just to see. Okay, can I pick it out? Okay, that's Dave. That's him right
Right.
there. You know.
That would have been in season one and season two. Uh, so in season one, I was just editing and adding him on guitar. In season two, I started to write. I took the summer where we had a break. I got all the gear together. The tech that was working with the other guys just put my rig together for me. So I had the same exact palette of sounds that the other guys had.
Mhm.
And I started kind of practicing over the summer just on old episodes. And starting in season two, I started writing. I still felt like I needed a little edge, so I'd bring Dave in to play guitar. After season two, I think I realized that a lot of what Dave was bringing was really more atmosphere. And I really actually had a lot of sounds that I could use atmospherically that would replace
Mhm.
what I was paying Dave to do. And I started to get a little bit more confident in my own
Ability,
ability
right?
and not feel like I needed an extra guy there to confirm that I was doing okay.
Right, right, right.
Um,
Would you I was gonna ask you, sorry to cut you off.
no, you didn't.
Um, is there what would you say the your favorite project you've ever worked on, or a show, or even, let's say, it could be an album in either any field. What's your favorite thing you've ever put your energy into?
Well, I have favorite moments, and then I have favorite recordings.
Okay.
So the favorite moments are all with Ringo Starr, um, because I grew up in the 60s and the 70s, and I'm a massive Beatles fan, and I'm a drummer.
Right.
And um, through series of events, because we've skipped a lot of stuff, but through series of events, I was asked to engineer for Ringo on a record, and I worked with Ringo for about 3.5 years. Did two records with him. One was just a regular, you know, album, and the second one was a Christmas album.
Okay.
And we did a couple VH1 shows, like VH1 Storytellers, and I got to play harmonica on those shows, and I got to mix those shows. And then I heard Ringo was going on tour with his all-star band, and he had been doing this for years, with great musicians from the 60s, 70s, 80s. Um, and we were working on the Christmas record, I think, and he's getting ready and putting this tour together. And they were going to go to Russia, and they were going to go to Portugal, and they were going to go to Germany and Holland and France and all over Europe, and to a lot of places I really wanted to go.
Mhm.
And so I just said, Ringo, you know, why don't you ask me? I'll go on tour with you, whatever you need.
Right, right.
Do
I
whatever
got
you
you.
need.
Let's go to the toilets, whatever you
Um,
need.
and I'm kind of veering off, but anyway, I did that as well with Ringo. But the moments, the times working with Ringo were the most amazing because the people that came in to play on his record, um, you know, Alanis Morissette, Brian Wilson, Tom Petty, Steven Tyler, Steve Cropper, Billy Preston, um, Timothy B. Schmidt from the Eagles, Scott Weiland from Stone Temple Pilots. All these people just coming into this very little studio where we were doing this record. It was a studio above a Thai restaurant in West LA. A tiny room, way smaller than this, way smaller. Um, uh, enough room for the drum kit in the little live room that was set up, and a couple guys to maybe stand next to him playing guitar and bass, and then a little control room. Um, and so you get these people coming in, and you're right there with them, and
Right.
they're
No,
close, and you're right,
yeah.
and they're my heroes. Um, so that's why I say even though maybe those records aren't my favorite records, maybe they are not the best sounding thing I think I ever did, or um, if I want to show off my engineering, I don't necessarily play those records
Right.
for several reasons. One, it was done digitally, um, and digitally before digital was really starting to sound good. We were doing it on D88s, which were 16-bit, and we had stacks of them because there was 8 channels on each. I think we had 5, so we could get 40 channels. And um, but working with him, and then that first record was mixed by Jeff Emmerich, who recorded and mixed all the Beatles stuff. So he's a hero.
Right.
And then the second record I did with Ringo, I mixed, and got to co-write a song. Essentially, I came up with a kind of a Indian sounding loop with sitar and tablas and stuff, and I brought it in and said, "What do you guys think of this?" And they liked it, and they wrote it's not really a song, like there's a verse and a chorus. It's more of a chant, a
Okay.
Christmas chant,
Like yeah.
where they're singing, well, in Latin, Pax Umbiscum means peace be with you.
Okay.
And so we had singers and Ringo singing singing "Peace Be with You" in all these different languages, and then every now and then Ringo would chime in "Merry Christmas," and so it was just a kind of a chant. But I've got a co-write. Like I said, I'm not a songwriter, but I
Right.
do have a co-write with a Beatle.
And
So,
that's a hell of it,
right?
and a ton of musical superstars that you grew up
Yes.
listening or
Yes.
inspired by.
Yeah.
That's
And
gonna.
they're all on it now. Paul and George are on that first record too, but I didn't get to record them. They did their own thing in their own studios
Sent it
in
over.
where they were. Yeah.
Gotcha. What would you give a message to somebody that's in music or in the television field? What's a message to somebody that's like aspiring to do something big in that?
It's different now than when I started, but I still believe that the difference in, say, myself compared to some of the guys I've met around here that kind of do the same thing I do. Maybe a little younger. Everybody's a little younger, it seems these days,
Uh,
but I think the difference is that I went to where the action was,
mm,
and I went to LA because I didn't really want to stay in New York. New York wasn't our vibe.
right,
Um, it was a good place to get started and leave Miami and kind of get started there, and it wasn't too far from home, so it felt fairly safe.
right,
Um, but I think just going to LA, I think that you say yes to everything. When they asked me to do that first record, when I was assisting, I wasn't experienced. And it was the guitar player from The Doors that they asked me to do a song with
right,
and be the engineer. And I just said yes. And it turned into the first record that I engineered and co-produced. And then went on with Robbie to be his engineer for live and his harmonica player on a couple songs every night. Um, uh, I lost the thread. I totally lost the thread there. That got me going. That got me started, and it was pure luck. I was in the right place.
not love,
The
but
but it was. I mean, there's a lot of luck involved. And you got to understand that. It's not
well, you were in the
you're in
right
the right
place at the
place.
right time,
And
and like you said,
with
you accepted,
almost enough ability, and
but
you say yes.
but you, yeah, like you say yes, and that's something that's important. A lot of, even me, I'll look and I'll be like, maybe I don't know if that's right for me, but just take the chance, and you never know what you'll get
Yeah,
from it.
yeah.
So I think that's a huge point. I really appreciate you, Mr. Scott Gordon, for coming. I have so much more to ask you. I think I probably got through three of my like 15 bullet points,
I'm
but no,
sorry, I probably was rambling on.
a lot of good stuff though. A lot of good
Okay.
stuff. So I got, maybe we'll get a second interview a year from now. Who knows? But
I'd love to do it again.
and
This is fun. What's better than talking about yourself?
that's what they say. But yeah, appreciate you. See you next Tuesday. We are out of here.
All right.
Peace.
Thank you, Neil.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you.
All right, man. That was great.
That was fun.
Was that all right?
Oh, you did great. You
All
did
right.
great.
All right.